Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Funding Opportunities for Your Community in 2021, an overview of what's ahead, hosted by the Bureau of Justice Assistance. At this time, I would like to introduce today's presenters, Vince Davenport, Associate Deputy Director for the Law Enforcement Division, and Thurston Bryant, Senior Policy Advisor with the Bureau of Justice Assistance, who will begin today's webinar.
Greetings on behalf of BJA Director Kendall Ehrlich and Deputy Directors Silas Darden and Kristen Mahoney. And thank you all for taking time to join us today. The overarching objective of today's webinar is to make you aware of funding opportunities, some of which are available now, and others that are anticipated in the coming weeks. Given the constraints of time, we will not be able to go into depth on each program, but we will provide you with enough information so that you can identify and flag certain funding opportunities that may be of interest to you and to your community. You can then visit our website for detailed information about all programs. And before I start, I would be remiss if I didn't take just a minute to recognize the challenging times that we find ourselves in as members of the criminal justice and public safety family. We find ourselves facing an ongoing worldwide pandemic, a devastating opioid crisis, growing mental health challenges, and diminished public confidence in law enforcement. The professions and disciplines of those on today's call represent the front lines dealing with these unprecedented and highly complex problems. Many of the funding opportunities that you will hear about today are directly responsive to these challenges and can augment your local efforts. So to everyone on this call, especially those of you on the front line in harm's way, thank you for all that you do to keep us safe. So now let's talk about how we can help bring federal resources to your community. BJA is proud to support our nation's law enforcement, state, local, and tribal criminal justice agencies, with the express purpose of reducing crime and strengthening communities. One of the most important ways that we do this is by providing grants to agencies and communities in order to support local efforts. We do our best to design programs that are responsive to real-world challenges and provide maximum flexibility for local implementation. BJA is committed to streamlining the application process and minimizing the administrative burden of managing our grants. We've made real progress in recent years in these areas, and it's never been easier to apply for and manage BJA grants. So in other words, do not be intimidated by the process or think that you need to be an experienced grant manager to successfully apply for BJA funding. If you have the desire to apply, we have the support to help you succeed. It is, however, important that you do not procrastinate once a solicitation is open. Waiting till the last week to apply may not leave you enough time to gather the necessary information and documentation needed for the application. We want you to succeed, so please start early. So there are two types of grants. There's discretionary and formula grants. And for the discretionary grants, applicants typically apply directly to OJP or BJA. These grants are typically competitive, and the awards are based on predetermined review processes and the availability of funding. For most programs, we receive more applications than we actually have funding, which is understandable because there's really just such a big demand out there. And so we try to fund the strongest proposals based on objective review criteria. Formula grants are typically awarded on a non-competitive basis. And what this means is that typically every eligible applicant receives some amount of funding. And the amount of funding for a specific agency or a jurisdiction, it can vary based on a variety of factors, which tend to include population, crime rates, and other considerations. Some formula grants are administered by state administering agencies, or SAAs. If you don't have an active relationship with your SAA, you should really start one today. And if you don't know who your SAA is, you can find a complete list on our website. So now let's talk about 2021 funding opportunities. And we've done our best to try to group these by topic areas. The first program to tell you about is the Comprehensive Opioid, Stimulant, and Substance Abuse Program, or COSAP. Very few communities have been spared by the effects of substance abuse. Substance abuse and mental health are two of the most often cited challenges for jurisdictions, whether large or small, urban or rural. COSAP supports efforts to reduce overdose deaths, promote public safety, and support access to treatment and recovery services. There are 9 purpose areas that can accommodate proposals at various entry points across the criminal justice spectrum, to include alternatives to incarceration, law enforcement-led diversion, recovery and support services, and medicated-assisted treatment, just to name a few. COSAP allows you to craft a proposal that is right for your community and responsive to your needs. The average award amount for the COSAP program is around $1 million. The next program is the Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program. This program seeks to increase public safety by facilitating collaboration among criminal justice, mental health, and substance abuse treatment entities. The goal is to increase access to mental health and other treatment services for individuals with mental illness or co-occurring mental illness and substance abuse disorders. Example projects include, but are not limited to, mental health courts or other court-based programs, and programs that support cooperative efforts by public safety officials and service providers to connect individuals with treatment and social services. Average award amounts for this program is $550,000. The Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistant Grant, or JAG, this is a flagship program for BJA, and many of you are probably already familiar with this. In general, JAG funds can be used to provide additional personnel, equipment, supplies, contractual support, training, technical assistance, and other information systems, so long as the proposed items fall under one of the 8 purpose areas that you see on this slide. Most JAG funding is managed by, that's probably an overstatement, not most, some of the JAG funding is managed by state administering agencies, or your SAAs. So in some cases, that's where you need to apply. And that's why it's important to have those relationships with the SAAs to make sure that you're in the loop and have timely information about current opportunities. Some jurisdictions can also apply directly to BJA for JAG assistance, depending on certain criteria, and this can be complex in some situations, so it's important that you check our website for more information on this. In other instances, jurisdictions may be able to pool JAG funding to support a shared or regional initiatives. For these types of funding opportunities with the JAG program, your SAA really is a good subject matter expert and can be a terrific resource for you. The Smart Policing Initiative provides funding to support or test promising initiatives and practices aimed at a community's pressing crime problems. The idea behind SPI is to promote creativity to not only enhance current best practices, but really to discover what the next practices are so that law enforcement and policing can evolve and become more effective. So if there's something that you're doing in your agency today that is you think is unique, and that it holds promise, or something that you've been thinking about doing that you believe holds promise for the rest of the law enforcement community, this really is a great program that you should consider applying for. Funds can be used for new personnel, overtime, software, hardware, and other allowable items to support the project. One kind of a new feature this year is that Congress has asked the Department of Justice to prioritize applications for the development of real-time crime centers in jurisdictions with high violent crime and high gun crimes. Award amounts for this program are $500,000. The body-worn camera program, this is a very popular program. Body-worn cameras are increasingly seen as must-haves for law enforcement, and you look around the country, a lot of communities are really demanding that their police departments adopt policies and utilize these cameras. BJA funds the purchase of body-worn cameras that are implemented as part of a comprehensive body-worn camera program. And for those of you that have waded into the body camera waters before, you know that this can be layered with complexity. There are a lot of considerations beyond just the purchase of the camera. There are digital storage costs and strategies that have to be worked out. There are privacy concerns and other considerations. And the good news is that our body-worn camera program provides much more than just the funding for the purchase of the cameras. BJA has a body-worn camera toolkit and a clearinghouse website for agencies interested in planning and implementing a body-worn camera program. So whether you're just starting from scratch or you're looking to enhance an existing program, our body-worn camera clearinghouse has a wealth of resources. Check our website for more information. Amounts for this program, they vary depending upon the agency size, but the award amounts range from $10,000 to $2 million. Next is the Stop School Violence program. This program provides funding to support threat assessments, mental health training, anti-bullying training, and other activities to promote a positive school climate. The ultimate goal of this program is to provide students and teachers with resources to recognize and prevent school violence. And regardless of which discipline or which profession you're in or where you are in the criminal justice spectrum, this comment not only applies to this program, but I think all of the programs that we're talking about today. Although it may not apply directly to your current position, be mindful of others that you have in your professional network or in your community that you communicate with. And if this program doesn't apply to you, be sure to share this information with someone else in your professional network that could make good use of it. And I say that because I view the Stop School Violence program as a program that really every community should apply for. These funds are important. They help to keep our children safe, and there's really no reason why every community shouldn't apply for these funds. We also encourage you to visit the COPS office website. They administer a companion program to this program that is, it's focused on doors, locks, cameras, and other target hardening measures. And again, every community can benefit from this program. Next is the Crime Gun Intelligence Centers program. This is a really important tool for communities experiencing high gun-related violent crime. The purpose is to encourage local jurisdictions to work with their ATF partners to identify firearms that are used unlawfully and their sources. And the ultimate objective, obviously, is to identify those perpetrators and to prosecute them. The Crime Gun Intelligence Centers utilize NIBIN. That's the National Integrated Ballistics Imaging Network, which many of you are probably familiar with, or maybe at least you've heard about that. Awards for this program are up to $700,000. The Emmett Till Cold Case Investigations Program is obviously named in honor of Emmett Till, a young man who was brutally murdered in 1955. And the purpose of this program is to support the investigation and the prosecution of racially motivated cold case murders and to support victims' families and stakeholders impacted by these cases. The only caveat here is that the funding is limited to those cases where a death occurred prior to 1980. The next program is IPEP. This is the Intellectual Property Enforcement Program. This program is designed to protect public health, safety, and our nation's economy from counterfeit and pirated goods. Funding under this program can be used to cover expenses to establish task forces to conduct investigations, forensic analysis, to acquire equipment to conduct the investigations, and funding to support prosecution. The aim, kind of the overarching aim, is to protect, or to prevent rather, deter, and identify criminal violations of IP laws. Project Safe Neighborhoods. This is a program where many of you have not only heard about it, but you've probably participated in your own communities. This is a nationwide initiative that brings communities together to identify pressing violent crime problems in a community and to develop comprehensive solutions to address them. PSN initiatives are led by U.S. attorneys' offices, which bring together federal and local law enforcement, prosecutors and community leaders, and other stakeholders for a holistic community-wide approach. We encourage you to reach out to your U.S. Attorney's Office if you'd like to be involved. I'll also take this opportunity to really kind of tout the role that U.S. Attorney's Offices play, not only just for federal assistance, but for so many other really important federal resources that are available. Each U.S. Attorney's Office has a law enforcement coordinator, or an LEC, if you ever hear that acronym. And the LECs typically, they actually do quite a bit for every jurisdiction, but one of the main things that they do is they facilitate information sharing with state, local, and tribal jurisdictions and agencies. So if you're not familiar with the term LEC, or you don't know who your law enforcement coordinator is, I would really recommend that you put this on your to-do list to contact your local U.S. Attorney's Office and ask for the LEC. Just introduce yourself, tell them who you are, make that connection. It's a really important relationship to have, regardless of which area of the criminal justice system that you are involved in. Prosecutors, as we all know, play a very vital role and are often underfunded and working with outdated technology and resources. So BJA's Innovative Prosecution Solutions for Combating Violent Crime program, this is also known as Smart Prosecution Program, is designed to support prosecutor offices to help them reduce caseloads, improve processes, and provide modern technology to better manage and track cases. This program, like many of BJA offerings, provides a high degree of flexibility so that local jurisdictions can craft a proposal that meets their specific needs and local challenges. And I just want to say another word about that. It's really important on our end of this relationship to be mindful of the fact that not all good ideas come from Washington. We know that for sure, and that you know your community best. So wherever we can, as we develop programs to support the real-time needs of the field, we do our very best to incorporate as much flexibility so that you can craft a program that looks like your community, that meets your specific needs, rather than just take a one-size cookie-cutter approach from Washington, D.C. The next program I want to talk about is the Byrne Criminal Justice Innovation Program. This is based on the principle that sustainable reductions in serious and violent crime requires service providers and the communities they serve to partner and to collaborate. These partnerships extend to community development corporations in some cases and private businesses that are involved in local revitalization or crime-fighting efforts. Funding under this program supports data-driven, community-oriented strategies to reduce crime in neighborhoods with concentrations of serious and violent crime. Average award amounts are around $900,000. Next up is Upholding the Rule of Law and Preventing Wrongful Convictions program. This program provides funding to support case reviews and post-conviction claims of innocence with a focus on those cases at greatest risk for error. This is a really important program which helps to identify potential systemic issues that may lead to wrongful convictions, and most of all, to ensure that innocent persons are exonerated. So that's my half of the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Thurston Bryant, who will tell you about other BJA programs.
Thanks, Vince. My name is Thurston Bryant, and I'm very happy and pleased to join everyone. I want to reiterate what Vince said earlier when we began the webinar, and I also want to thank all of you for continuing to be our criminal justice partners, continuing to work collaboratively with everyone and each other within your communities, and with continuing to make our nation safe. As you've seen and as you'll continue to see, BJA is positioned to provide funding opportunities that cover the entire criminal justice spectrum. The slides that I will provide information on include programs from our corrections and reentry, drug courts, forensics, tribal justice, and other portfolios. I will note if these programs have solicitations that have actually been posted for all of you to apply for. And I will also include information on what the closing dates are for those posted solicitations. The first several slides that I'll provide information on and an overview are from our corrections and reentry portfolio. For those of you who have applied for these programs in the past, you'll see some familiarity, such as the Second Chance Act and the Prison Rape Elimination Act. The first program that I want to talk about is the Innovations and Supervision Initiative, Building Capacity to Create Safer Communities. This program provides opportunities for community corrections agencies to improve supervision outcomes for individuals that they supervise. The goal of the program is to develop, implement, and/or test strategies to improve the capacity and effectiveness of probation and parole agencies, to increase probation and parole success rates and reduce the rate of recidivism for those under supervision. These efforts would reduce crime, victimization, admissions to prisons and jails, and save taxpayer dollars. Under this program, BJ anticipates to make up to 7 awards with an average amount of up to $715,000. The next program that I want to talk about is the Justice Reinvestment Initiative, Reducing Violent Crime by Improving Justice System Performance. BJ has been fortunate enough to administer the Justice Reinvestment, or JRI, program since around 2010. This current program that we're going to administer under 2021 will allow grantees to apply data-driven approaches to identify and respond to crime and other public safety problems, including violent crime, develop and implement innovative responses, and invest in strategies that can decrease crime and reduce recidivism. Applicants may address a criminal justice challenge directly or explain how they will remove impediments to addressing a challenge, allowing jurisdictions to have more resources for preventing crime, apprehending and prosecuting perpetrators, ensuring efficient and effective court and pretrial decision-making, breaking down information silos, facilitating appropriate sentencing and treatment, and protecting community security. Under this program, it's estimated that BJA will make up to 5 awards and for up to $5 million. The next program is the Swift, Certain, and Fair Supervision Program, applying the principles behind Project Hope. This program furthers the department's mission by reducing the number of crimes committed by people under community supervision, which in turn enhances the safety of law enforcement officers and the communities that they serve, decreases readmissions to prisons and jails, and can help save taxpayer dollars. State, local, and tribal community supervision agencies under this program will develop and test new or enhanced applications of the swift, certain, and fair principles of intervention in order to reduce recidivism and improve outcomes for people under community supervision. Under this program, awards will be made for up to $700,000. The RSAT program, like you'll see with some of our other programs that we just discussed today, is a program that BJ has administered for several years. RSAT assists states with developing and implementing residential substance abuse treatment programs within state correctional facilities, as well as within local correctional and detention facilities in which inmates are incarcerated for a period of time sufficient to permit substance abuse treatment. The program encourages the establishment and maintenance of drug-free prisons and jails, and developing and implementing specialized residential substance abuse treatment programs that identify and provide appropriate treatment to inmates with co-occurring mental health and substance abuse disorder or challenges. The objectives of this program are to enhance the capabilities of states and units of local and tribal governments to provide residential substance abuse treatment for incarcerated inmates, prepare individuals for reintegration back into their communities, assist individuals and communities through the reentry process by delivering community-based treatment and other broad-based aftercare services. Please note, for those of you that are interested in this program, this solicitation has posted with a closing date of March the 2nd of this year. BJ has been working with the correctional field and administering different activities under the Prison Rape Elimination Act since 2010. This current program that you see here on the slide is for our site-based programs. The goal of the PREA, the Prison Rape Elimination Act site-based program, is to assist confinement facilities to include prisons, jails, juvenile confinement facilities, community confinement facilities, and police lockups, and other agencies that oversee them in preventing, identifying, and responding to sexual abuse and sexual harassment in these facilities, and also to support compliance with the national PREA standards. The overall objectives of the program are to reduce sexual abuse in confinement facilities, increase staff capacity for preventing sexual abuse in confinement facilities, promote integration of the PREA standards into the day-to-day operations and cultures of confinement facilities, identify and document innovative and promising practice in order to inform similar efforts across the nation, and also to create cultures of zero tolerance of sexual abuse in confinement facilities. Under this program, estimated awards amounts will be made for up to $250,000. Please note that this solicitation has posted with a closing date of April 6th of this year for those of you who are interested in applying. The next program that we want to provide an overview on within our corrections and reentry portfolio is the Combating Contraband Cell Phone Use in Prisons program. The purpose of this program is to assist state and local governments, including federally recognized Indian tribes that have detention capacity, to operationalize effective and secure managed access systems in order to prevent, detect, seize, protect against, and stop the presence and use of contraband cell phones by detainees and inmates in correctional facilities. Applicants may propose to enhance or implement new physical, technical, or tactical managed access systems for these purposes. In addition, applicants are encouraged to identify strategies to educate relevant staff members and other key stakeholders about steps that they can take to address contraband cell phones, as well as define a process to gather, use, and share intelligence acquired by seizing contraband cell phones. For those of you who might be interested in applying for this program, please note that this solicitation has posted with a closing date of April the 8th of this year. The Innovations in Reentry Initiative, Building System Capacity and Testing Strategies to Reduce Recidivism, provides state and local jurisdictions and Indian tribes with the resources to identify assets and gaps in their reentry systems and improve their overall approach to reentry. Under this program, applicants will develop and implement comprehensive reentry strategies to create more well-functioning reentry systems that reduce recidivism among individuals who are at medium to high risk for recidivating upon release from prisons or jails. A well-functioning system has comprehensive data collection and usage, adequate information sharing to ensure referral to the right programs and services, adequate staffing, and skills to execute effective delivery, as well as a community landscape with enough resources to address the needs of returning citizens. Under this program, BJ anticipates making an estimated 4 awards with a maximum award amount of up to $1 million. The next couple of programs are programs that are being administered under the Second Chance Act, which some of you might be familiar with who are functioning in the correctional field. The Second Chance Act Adult Reentry Education, Employment, Treatment, and Recovery Program is designed to improve correctional educational and employment services for general inmate populations and to improve treatment services for those with substance use disorders. This will in turn help reduce recidivism, promote public safety and recovery, and enhance employment prospects for incarcerated adults reentering the workforce. These partnerships can also support the establishment and improvement of academic and vocational educational programs and career training programs available in prisons and jails. Overall, these efforts will improve public safety and public health. Under this program, BJ anticipates making various categorical awards with a maximum award amount of up to $900,000. And you'll see on the slide the different number of awards that we anticipate making under the different categories for this program. The next program that we wanted to discuss is the Second Chance Act Comprehensive Community-Based Adult Reentry Program. This program provides opportunities for nonprofit service providers and tribes to implement or expand on reentry programs that demonstrate strong partnerships with corrections, parole, probation, and other reentry service providers in order to provide critical transitional services as individuals return from incarceration back into their communities. These partnerships should develop comprehensive case management plans that directly address criminogenic risk and needs as determined by validated tools and risk assessments and include delivery or facilitation of services. The grants made under this program may be used for mentoring adult offenders during incarceration, through transition back to the community and post-release, also for transitional services to assist in the reintegration of offenders back into the community, and also for training regarding individuals and victim and victims issues. This solicitation is a little bit different from the ones that we administer under the Second Chance Act portfolio in that nonprofit organizations are able to apply for it directly for funding. While the other reentry solicitations may be directed towards states and localities and tribes as the eligible applicants, keep in mind that nonprofits could partner with them under those other solicitations that are for states and localities, but they could do so as a sub-grantee under those other solicitations. And so, for example, they will partner with the state locality or the tribal entity as a sub-grantee in order to provide community services. Awards under this program will be made for up to $750,000. That concludes the program slides pertaining to our corrections and reentry portfolio. Now I want to talk briefly about our Adult Drug Court and Veterans Court Discretionary Grant Program, which is another program that BJA has been fortunate enough to administer for several years. The Adult Drug and Veterans Court Discretionary Grant Program supports efforts by states, locals, and tribal courts to address the needs of individuals in the criminal justice system with substance abuse issues, including targeting the needs of veterans. The goal of the program is to equip courts and other criminal justice and treatment and service providers with tools to effectively integrate evidence-based substance abuse treatment, random mandatory drug testing, equitable sanctions and incentives, and transitional services, in supervised court settings with jurisdiction over high-risk, high-need individuals that will reduce recidivism and substance abuse and prevent overdoses and deaths. This includes a focus on individuals with co-occurring disorders, many of whom are served in these programs. For those of you who are interested in this program, please note that this solicitation has posted to the field with a closing date of March the 17th. Now I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about some of the other programs that we administer under BJ under a different criminal justice topic area. The next several slides will include programs administered under BJ's forensic science portfolio. For those of you who are aware, beginning last year under fiscal year 2020, BJ expanded its forensic portfolio from solely the sexual assault kit initiative that you see here to a portfolio that now includes several additional programs transitioned from the Office of Justice Programs National Institute of Justice, which is one of our sister or partner agencies within OJP that we work closely with. So firstly, I want to talk, the first program that I want to talk about and provide a brief overview on is the Sexual Assault Kit Initiative, or SAKI. SAKI is critical to enhancing the criminal justice response to sexual assault and ensuring justice for victims. Funding not only helps link victims to advocates and needed services, but also helps jurisdictions implement best practices and comprehensive reform to help bring perpetrators to justice and increase safety in communities by preventing future sexual assaults. The SAKI program provides funding to support multidisciplinary community response teams to inventory, track, and expeditiously test previously unsubmitted sexual assault kits, collect and test lawfully owed DNA from offenders' arrestees, produce necessary protocols and policies to improve collaboration among laboratories, police, prosecutors, and victim service providers, provide resources to address the sexual assault investigations and prosecutions that result from evidence, and CODIS hits, combined DNA index system hits produced by tested sexual assault kits, and optimize victim notification protocols and services. This program has been highly effective and one of our flagship programs among the other ones that you have seen that we're presenting on. Under fiscal year 2021 for SAKI, BJ estimates making 40 awards with an average award amount of up to $1.2 million. The next forensic science program that I wanted to discuss is the DNA Capacity Enhancement for Backlog Reduction Program, which is a formula-based program and one of the several programs that BJ acquired and transitioned last year from NIJ. This program was merged years ago from the previously independently administered DNA Capacity Enhancement and Convicted Offender DNA Backlog Reduction programs. The goals of this program are to assist eligible states and units of local government to process, record, screen, and analyze forensic DNA and or DNA database samples, increase the capacity of public forensic DNA and DNA database laboratories to process more DNA samples, thereby helping to reduce the number of forensic DNA and DNA database samples awaiting analysis. Under this year, BJ estimates making 136 awards with amounts of up to $5 million. The next forensic program that I wanted to briefly talk about is the Prosecuting Cold Cases Using DNA program. The grantees under this program will receive funding support for the prosecution of violent crime cold cases where DNA from a suspect has been identified. Suspects may be known or unknown. And provided that DNA from a suspect or suspects have been identified, funding will support investigative activities and crime and forensic analyses that could lead to prosecution. The program provides funds to prosecute violent crime in cold cases and decrease the number of violent crime cold cases awaiting prosecution. Under this year, BJ estimates making 11 awards with an estimated average amount of up to $500,000. One of our other forensic science programs is the Paul Coverdell Forensic Science Improvement Grants Program. Now note that Covered L, as we call it, includes both an individual competitive and formative-based program. What you see here is the Paul Coverdell Competitive Program. The Paul Coverdell Competitive Program seeks to improve the quality and timeliness of forensic science and medical examiner coroner services, including services provided by laboratories operated by states and units of local government. Under this year, BJ anticipates making up to 9 awards for an estimated amount of up to $165,000. BJ's post-conviction testing of DNA evidence program assists in defraying the costs associated with post-conviction DNA testing in cases of violent felony offenses as defined by state law in which actual innocence might be demonstrated. Funding may be used to identify and review such post-conviction cases and to locate and analyze associated biological evidence. For this year under this program, BJ estimates making 8 awards with an estimated average amount of up to $500,000. The last forensic science program that I wanted to mention is the Strengthening the Medical Examiner Coroner System program. Investigations of violent deaths performed by medical examiner and coroners offices are vital to the criminal justice system. However, there are systematic issues with death investigation data quality and infrastructure, inadequate facilities, and inconsistent expertise levels. In addition, the NDC community lacks adequate personnel and resources to address medical legal death investigation needs. To address some of these deficiencies, this program was created, which provides funding for forensic pathology fellowships and projects that assist MEC offices to seek accreditation and personnel certifications. This program not only helps to address the extreme shortage of board-certified forensic pathologists in the United States, but also provides MEC offices with the resources to become accredited and support the enhancement of medical legal death investigations nationwide. Under this year, BJ estimates making 12 awards with an estimated average amount of up to $165,000. Over the next 2 slides, I want to talk about 2 programs that are specific for our tribal justice partners and their communities. The Coordinated Tribal Assistance Solicitation, or CTAS, is another program that BJ has worked with and been able to administer for several years. CTAS seeks to improve public safety and victim services in tribal communities. The solicitation provides federally recognized tribes and tribal consortia with an opportunity to apply for funding to aid in developing a comprehensive and coordinated approach to public safety and victimization. The grant programs outlined in CTAS are referred to as purpose areas. Applicants may apply for funding under these purpose areas that best address tribes' concerns related to public safety, criminal and juvenile justice, and responses to domestic violence, child abuse, sexual assault, and other crimes. As you'll see here, BJ oversees purpose areas 2, 3, and 4, which support comprehensive strategic planning, programs for adult tribal justice systems from prevention and treatment to tribal courts, corrections and reentry, and strategies to address violent crime, and also to support tribal justice infrastructure investments through renovation and modular buildings. You'll see the specific breakdown for the number of awards that BJ anticipates making and those amounts in relation to the different purpose areas on the slide here. The second specific tribal justice program that I wanted to highlight is our Tribal Civil and Criminal Legal Assistance Program. This program has received annual appropriations since around 2010. The program provides civil and criminal legal assistance to low-income individuals, Indian tribes, and tribal justice systems to support the development and enhancement of tribal justice systems and access to those systems. While the goal of the program is to build and enhance capacity, improve delivery of legal services to individuals and tribes, and develop policies that improve access to tribal justice systems, funding can also support other needs of eligible tribes, such as providing conflict counsel for tribes exercising enhanced sentencing authority or specialized domestic violence criminal jurisdiction authorized through the Violence Against Women Act of 2013, and also supporting veterans legal clinics for Native American veterans. Under this year, BJ anticipates making 2 or more awards with an estimated award amount of up to $600,000. For those of you who are listening who might be interested in this program, please note that this solicitation has posted with a closing date of March the 24th. The Kevin and Avante program, Reducing Injury and Death of Missing Individuals with Dementia and Developmental Disabilities program, supports local jurisdictions' efforts to reduce the number of deaths and injuries of individuals with forms of dementia, such as Alzheimer's disease, or developmental disabilities, such as autism, who, due to their condition, wander from safe communities and safe environments, and to design, establish, or operate holistic, locally based, proactive programs to locate these individuals or prevent them from wandering from safe environments. The program provides funding to law enforcement and public safety agencies to implement locative technologies to track missing individuals, and to such agencies and partnering nonprofit organizations to develop or operate programs to prevent wandering, increase individual safety, and facilitate rescues. Please note that if you're interested in this program, this solicitation has been posted with a closing date of March the 3rd. The Hal Rogers Prescription Drug Monitoring Program, or PDMP, enhances the capacity of law enforcement agencies and public health officials to collect and analyze controlled substance prescription data and other scheduled chemical products through a centralized database administered by an authorized agency. Under this program, grantees can use funds to support PDMP staff, including data analysts, epidemiologists, support program evaluation, fund contracts with vendors to operate a state PDMP program, connect to other states and other health systems, or otherwise enhance the capabilities of a PDMP. If interested, please note this solicitation has been posted with a closing date of March the 5th of this year. This is a loan repayment program for those of you who may be unaware. The goal of the John R.J. Justice Grant Program, which is also referred to as the John R. Justice Student Loan Repayment Program, is to offer an incentive for all states and territories to be able to attract, recruit, and retain talented and eligible local, state, and federal public defenders, as well as local and state prosecutors, by setting up and maintaining a student loan repayment assistance program for attorneys with the most student loan financial burden who agreed to commit to an extended employment and public interest law and these roles, as I mentioned earlier, for a minimum of 36 months. Please note that this solicitation is currently open with a closing date of March the 2nd. That concludes the slides in terms of information on our specific programs. But stay tuned, because we still want to provide you with some additional resources and information that may be able to further assist your needs. While we did not discuss during today's presentation on the specific programs, there are typically national training and technical assistance providers, or TTA providers, that are associated with most of these programs. So among these various services that the TTA provider provides to the grantees in the field is to help to assist the grantees with achieving their project goals and performance measurement, and provide lessons learned to the grantees from the field and across grantees and other types of invaluable resources. So we suggest that, in addition to examining these funding opportunities, that you take a look at some of those TTA providers that are associated with those specific grant programs. We also previously noted that some of these solicitations have been posted for the field. However, for those solicitations that have not yet been posted or released, please note that the solicitation release dates are still pending and are on a rolling basis. To stay abreast on when those funding opportunities will be made available, it's suggested that you subscribe under BJ's website in order to receive electronic email notification on when those funding opportunities and other significant BJ news and resources will become available. On one of the next slides, we'll provide a link for BJ's main webpage so that you can use that information successfully to stay on top of what's coming out. In relation to the application submission deadlines, we typically post our solicitations for at least 60 days. However, this time frame may vary and some solicitations may be posted for a longer period of time. Just wanted you guys to be aware of that. This next slide just quickly talks about DOJ's program plan. For those of you who aren't aware, this is a great resource because what we've talked about during our presentation are funding opportunities for BJA. The DOJ program plan, what it does is it provides information on anticipated funding resources across the entire federal government. So you heard Vince earlier talk about how BJA, which is located within OJP, is one of the three main grant components in addition to the COPS office and the Office on Violence Against Women. Once you access the DOJ program plan, it will show you solicitations and funding opportunities that are coming up from all three main grant components. So that includes also within OJP, the other bureaus in addition to BJA that provide grant funding to the field. So this is a wonderful mechanism for you to kind of stay on top of what might be coming out and also to kind of address the needs for your different agencies and your jurisdictions. I mentioned that there might be some other opportunities from the other grant components. What I suggest is that you access their main websites, and then they will have a subscribe button so that you can also become aware of funding opportunities that are coming out from COPS and from the Office on Violence Against Women, similar to BJA. This is just a one-page listing of the different resources that you might be unaware of. The first one is the BJA website. I kind of mentioned that if you go onto the BJA website on the main page, in the upper right-hand corner, there is a subscribe link. What we suggest is that you go ahead and click on that. It's as simple as putting in your email address so that when these funding opportunities become available, you'll receive an email notification on not only that, but some other exciting resources and activities that BJA is engaged in. All that information will be provided to you electronically. The second link here is the OJP Grant Funding Resources page. This will enable you to go and access funding opportunities that are coming up from the other bureaus within OJP in addition to BJA. The next link that you see there is grants.gov. Now, grants.gov is great because it provides funding information across the entire federal government, not just BJA or not just the Justice Department. For example, for our partners who are on the phone who are interested in corrections and reentry, DOJ for a number of years through BJA and our sister agency, the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, have administered Second Chance Act, reentry, and correctional funding opportunities. However, we've worked collaboratively with our partners at the Department of Labor and the Department of Health and Human Services for a number of years. And so if you're interested in reentry, for example, you can go onto grants.gov. It will provide funding opportunities for these other federal agencies such as Department of Labor, Department of Health and Human Services that might be able to fit your needs outside of the Justice Department. Thereby, that enables you to not only utilize the resources from the Justice Department, but also from these other federal agencies in like a collectional effort to address all the needs to make your communities and your jurisdictions safer. This Just Grants link here is there to help you modernize and improve the functionality of the grants management system. As you are aware, may be aware, Just Grants replaced OJP and OVW's current grants management system, GMS, which we use for a number of years, as well as the next generation system used by the COPS office. Just Grants is a streamlined end-to-end grants management system that provides applicants and grantees with improved user experience throughout key parts of the grant management lifecycle. And Just Grants will continue to evolve and improve over time moving forward. And then DOJ will also continue to enhance the system's functionality to bring even more benefits to applicants, grant recipients, and DOJ personnel. Lastly, these last two, the OJP award data, this is a great resource tool for you to kind of go on to see like what funding is actually out there in the different jurisdictions across the country and within your area. And so there might be a lot of money that's out there that you're unaware of, especially in these key criminal justice topic areas that you might be involved in, And so that'll allow you to kind of see like where that money has gone to, and then that will enable you to kind of do some outreach, make some connections, and establish some partnerships potentially with those groups so that you can kind of collectively address your needs in the future. Lastly, crimesolution.gov is a website-based clearinghouse of programs and practices that have been rated in terms of effectiveness in addressing different criminal justice issues. So you can go and access the Crime Solutions website, and then you can like search for different criminal justice areas, whether that's reentry or law enforcement or what have you, and then you can look at some of these projects that have occurred in these programs and see how effective they have been with providing treatment and other different provisions to the community. And then that will maybe allow you to get some ideas for maybe using some of that information to enhance your own jurisdictions and some of your own projects. Lastly, this is just like a link, a slide real quick we want to provide you. It's another resource that enables you to access previously recorded webinars. So, for example, the webinar that we're doing right now will be archived on here. If there's some from prior time periods that you're interested in, you can go on there and you can access those. We mentioned that I think it's next Thursday, the 21st, is going to be like an additional webinar. Once that's concluded, you can go on there and listen to that recording and examine that transcript, because this is great, because this allows not only you, but then your colleagues who might not have been able to participate in the webinar while it was going live to actually go back and listen to that information. This is my last slide, then I will turn over to my partners, but this is just a slide where we want to kind of encourage and thank you all for maybe volunteering to be peer reviewers. OJP and BJ are always looking for new peer reviewers to provide their expertise and help OJP expand its peer review database. So if you're interested, dust off your resume, take a look at the information here, and provide that to the email address that you see on the screen. We want to thank you in advance if you're able to do so by helping us to routinely expand our database and use your expertise in evaluating our projects for funding. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to our host, who will complete the presentation, and then we will go from there and answer your questions. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. There's just a couple more slides that we're going to go over before we get to the question and answer portion. As previously mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, there will be another BJA webinar next week on Thursday, the 21st at 1 p.m. The title is The Funding Process, First Steps to Applying, How to Prepare Now, and Other Considerations. This webinar is a great complement to the one that is currently going on, and it's going to go over the necessary steps to apply, how to navigate grants.gov, as well as the new JUST grants and the differences between those two things. And they're actually going to walk through a little bit of the JUST grants process. You can register for this webinar by going to the BJA website, bja.oj.gov, selecting the Events tab, which is located at the top right hand of the screen, your website screen, and then clicking on Funding Webinars. It should be the second webinar listed. If you click on that, then you can go to the registration page. We obviously want you to stay to BJA, and a great way to do that is to sign up for the BJA emails. You can now text to subscribe. You can send a text message to 468-311 and insert your email address. Just please note that message and data rates may apply. BJA also has a presence on Facebook and Twitter. The URLs for those two items are listed on the slide that you are looking at right now. And again, you can visit the BJA website to sign up for their funding, to look for funding opportunities, publications, and other initiatives. If you have questions after today's webinar about specifics about a solicitation, you can reach out to the Response Center. Their information is listed in many of the solicitations as a contact, and you can email them at grants@ncjrs.gov. They also have a toll-free number, 851-3420, as well as a line for hearing impaired, 301-240-6310. The Response Center is open 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Fridays, and they are open later on the day a solicitation closes. In addition, they also offer a weekly funding newsletter that I highly recommend that you subscribe to. As I mentioned, it's weekly. It comes out each Friday. It does announce all the new funding opportunities from BJA, as well as the other agencies within the Office of Justice programs. It's a great way to stay on top of what is coming out when there are webinars such as this one, or webinars specific to a solicitation that will be occurring. To subscribe to that, you go to the NCJRS website, jrs.gov. You can go to the bottom, the center section that's talking about funding, and then at the bottom of that, you'll see subscribe to funding news from NCJRS. If you click on that, you can subscribe to that weekly newsletter. So at this time, we are going to turn over the webinar and start answering the many, many questions that we have received from you all.
Hi, before we get into the actual questions asked within the portion, I will want to reiterate, since we got this several times throughout, and that is the recording, transcript, and PowerPoint for today's webinar will be posted to the BJA website in approximately 10 business days. So certainly be on the lookout for that for follow-up and for archival purposes. So with that, we can just kind of go in order here as the questions came in. Vince, Thurston, just be mindful of your mute button when you want to speak, and we'll just kind of go into it now. So the first one is, I cannot currently find the adult drug court solicitation and drug just grants. Is that available, or when will that be available?
Hi, this is Thurston. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hi, this is Thurston. What I would do is once you go to the main webpage at BJA, if you can't find it there, at the top of the main webpage at BJA, you'll see at the top on the menu bar, you'll see funding opportunities. I can't think of the exact terminology because I don't have my screen open, but you'll see funding. If you click on that, there should be a link for current funding. So that will tell you all the current solicitations that have been posted. Once you go to the specific page for that solicitation, you'll see, like a summary of the solicitation, but then also upload, I think download. That will provide you with an actual solicitation and instruction on how to get started. So if you can't find it through the other way that you just mentioned, go to the BJA website. As I said, main webpage for BJA, funding opportunities, click current funding, and then all the things that have been posted thus far are listed there. And don't forget, I also suggest that you subscribe to get that email notification as well. So like as we continue to roll out new programs and solicitations, the email blast will come out from our communications team to let you know that that funding opportunity is currently now available with the closing date as well.
Thank you. Next question. Is there assistance for the application fees? And in parentheses, DUNS, D-U-N-S. Yes,
there should be. This is Thurston. What I would do is stay tuned to the webinar that we have next week on the 21st, which will actually get into details on how to apply under these various programs. So that'll get into more in-depth discussion on like a step-by-step basis on how to apply, which would include the DUNS number and all those sorts of parameters that you have to kind of go through those different steps. But that's like what I would suggest to kind of tune in definitely for next Thursday for that. As part of that webinar, we'll have someone from our one of our offices who actually works on just grants as an expert, so they'll be able to kind of answer some of those questions with more detail and to assist you.
Next question is, are police departments of private universities who have fully certified police officers working under the auspices of a municipal police department eligible for direct funding and or as subrecipients to the municipal police department for example, body-worn cameras?
Sure, this is Vince. I'll be happy to answer that. So if you're a state accredited and a state certified police agency, law enforcement agency, and you meet your state's definition for that, in most cases, you would be eligible just as any other police department in your state. And I just put that little caveat on there. In most cases, I would always defer to and refer you to a specific solicitation for the exact eligibility criteria. But in most cases, as long as you're recognized as a certified law enforcement agency by your state, that's good enough for us.
Next question is, can body-worn camera program funds be used for video storage?
So unfortunately, at this time, I believe, well, first off, the solicitation is not out yet. I know that in the past that storage has not been a covered cost under the body-worn camera program. And I don't want to get ahead of the policy of people who are actually working on the body-worn camera solicitation that's going to be coming out soon. But as of last year, storage was not a covered cost. And we know that that's a real big issue. And I know that Congress is aware of that as well. And so whether it's going to be addressed in the new solicitation or maybe in some future solicitation, that's still yet to be seen. But as of now, the answer is no.
Next question. Are public universities eligible to apply for Stop School Violence programs?
That's actually a tricky question. So Stop School, so the Stop funding, the Stop Act really was aimed at K through 12 education. And so I do know that under some circumstances that there are relationships between K through 12 school districts and institutions of higher learning. And sometimes that involves students that are actually physically on campus, for example, under certain circumstances. And so generally, the answer, I guess, the best answer I could give you is generally no. However, I would, again, refer you to the solicitation once it's posted for specific eligibility criteria, because there could conceivably be ways that where eligibility could be achieved. But again, we'll just have to wait for the solicitation to come out.
The next question, which was answered within some of the slides, do you have an estimate of when these funding opportunities are going to be posted?
I'll just say a word about that. So, if you subscribe to our information services, you stay in touch with us, you'll get regular emails. And I know that there's an email that comes out, I think, once a week, talks about different programs. But I would really encourage you to check that every day. It's a really fluid time right now for solicitations. Our policy teams and our program teams, everybody is, working. It feels like day and night sometimes, but we're really working hard to get these solicitations out as quickly as possible. And truth is, by the end of today, there could be additional solicitations that become available that are not available at the start of this webinar. So I would just say, Thurston mentioned the BJA website. If you just go to the BJA website, just the main website, bja.ojp.gov, and you just go to, it's right smack dab in the middle of the screen at the top. It says fundings and awards, and you can click on the current funding opportunities. I think at this time of year, just knowing how active this rolling process is right now, if, depending upon what you're looking for, I don't think it would hurt to check this every, day or two or three to make sure that you don't get too far behind of what's available.
And this is Thurston, to piggyback off of what Vince said again. We keep mentioning this, subscribe. Vince and myself, we are subscribed to the BJ electronic notification. So whenever like a new solicitation is posted, we get that email that says new funding opportunity, et cetera. And so that is really a great mechanism, in addition to what Vince mentioned, just to kind of stay on top of the resources and the funding opportunities that BJA is putting out. Also, you just want to check too as a precaution to make sure that stuff doesn't go into your spam folder or what have you. But I think between those two things, I think that's a great way to stay connected with BJA's funding opportunities for this year.
The next question, are all of the grant programs being discussed available now, or is this a list of known or expected programs to be available?
So the list that we covered today, these are programs that we anticipate having available this year. These are programs that some of them have already posted, some of them have already hit the streets, so to speak, and are available for applications right now. But every program that we talked about today is a program that we anticipate we will offer soon this year. And so, that could change. Obviously, we're in the midst of changing administrations in Washington, D.C., as everybody knows. And so, as things stand today, this is the block of programs that are scheduled to be released this year. But again, stay tuned, stay in touch, and stay informed, and we'll let you know if there are any changes.
Can you share the average grant amount and number of awards for the COSAP program, Comprehensive Opioid Stimulant and Substance Abuse Site-Based Program?
I can tell you what we did last year. So last year, I think we funded 110 sites. I think 10 of those were states. Those were approximately $3 million apiece. And then we funded another 100 or so. I think it's a little more than 100 sites. And the average award amount, it's a really high amount. Maybe it's between $500,000 and $1 million. So those are really, typically those tend to be pretty big awards. And because that's a big pool of money, the odds of getting those awards is actually pretty good. Some of these programs are highly, highly competitive where there's just a small number of awards that are made. But COSAP is one of those that, because of the tremendous need that we all know about across the country and substance abuse, it's one where we do make quite a bit of awards. And so if it's something that's important to you, it's on your radar and something you want to be involved in, definitely keep your eyes open for that solicitation when it comes out and apply.
Yeah, this is Thurston. One other thing I want to add is we kind of mentioned throughout the presentation that most of these programs that we discussed have a TTA provider component to them. And so that might be a national resource center as such. For COSAP, there's a similar one. I think if you just Google BJA, COSAP, TTA Resource Center, there will be a link. You'll see our logo once you access that website. But there will be information on that website about some of the funding over the years and some of the available resources to the field. So those sorts of things, the TTA providers' websites and things of that nature, they're great because it's not only information for the grantee, but there's also some information, some lessons learned on there that we mentioned for all of you as well. And so for COSAP, like I said, I think if you just Google BJA, COSAP, TTA Resource Center, I think there will be a link and you'll see our logo on that website. A lot of information on there.
The next question was addressed a little bit earlier, but I saw that the prosecution grant was released yesterday. Can we expect more solicitations to come out in the near future, say next week?
Yes.
Next question, is CTAS going to be released this year?
We fully expect it to be released. I'm not sure. I know that the timeline with CTAS, and I saw that question when it came in. I know that it's typically open by now this time of year on in the annual grant making cycle. But we fully expect it to be released, and it could be sooner rather than later. But again, everything again is kind of in flux right now. But I do think you could certainly, I would say, pretty much count on the fact that is going to be released.
Right, exactly. Plus with CTAS, BJ works in conjunction with some of the other federal agencies as well. So that solicitation is not simply as simple as BJ putting it out. It's more like a collaborative effort. So yes, we anticipate putting that out.
We're a provider of SUD and mental health programs for courts and reentry to reduce crime through our telehealth and use of artificial intelligence. Would we work with communities and courts as the applicant on many of these opportunities? And are there any available for small businesses to apply directly?
So I'm not aware I'm not aware of programs that are where a business, a provider of some, for-profit service or whatever could apply directly. Again, I would just refer, I would always refer questions like that to specific solicitations where the eligibility criteria is laid out with very clear specificity.
Yeah, the other thing too is I mentioned the one reentry correction solicitation that we're going to put out, which is for nonprofits, because typically these are for states and local units of government and also for tribes. But that one's for nonprofits. And when I kind of talked about that one, I kind of mentioned that even though the nonprofit organization might not be able to apply for these other ones directly, they could still be a sub-grantee. Like if the state or the locality actually applied, they could be a sub-grantee. Same thing in this situation, that could be a possibility. And then I also mentioned for some of the corrections reentry work to look outside of DOJ, because there are other federal agencies that provide grant funding to that specific purpose area. I mentioned the Department of Labor, Health and Human Services. For example, the Department of Labor, they will have solicitations for nonprofits or FBCs, faith-based community organizations. And so I would, check on grants.gov to see if there's something outside of DOJ or outside of what we administer, to see if there's something that fits your needs. But then perhaps as a sub-grantee, you would be able to maybe receive funding and help to provide treatment services in that realm versus receiving it directly.
Next question is, does your organization need to have an ORI number to apply? If so, how do you obtain such a number?
This is Thurston. I'm unsure. That's a question that I would definitely tune in for next week when we talk about how to apply. I think that's something that could be definitely answered. I don't want to say definitely, but I think that's something that would fall along the lines of the subject area for next week's webinar on how to apply and some of those specific steps for that. But I don't have that answer directly. I'm not sure.
Yeah, this is Vince. I know that at one point, I know the COPS office, and there may be other DOJ components that required an ORI number, but that's really, I think, changing. And so Thurston's answer is spot on. Definitely tune in next week, and we can be sure to address that.
Back to the COSAP program. Are they accepting applications from 501c3 nonprofits along with the Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program?
So the primary recipients and eligible applicants are states, tribes, and units of local government for those programs. However, it's very common for other entities that are not states, tribes, and local governments to be sub-grantees and sub-awardees. And so, again, it really is a case-by-case, but in most cases, you have to be, especially for COSAP, for example, you have to be a state, tribe, or a government to apply.
And this was addressed generally, but worth just reiterating for the moment. Where exactly can I find the application for the body-worn camera program? And also, is there a due date?
Yeah, it's not out yet. Again, if you just subscribe to the information and services that we offer, you'll get a notice as soon as it's released. Or you could just check our website as often as you want, right smack dab in the middle of the page at the top, where it talks about funding opportunities. But we expect it to be released sometime soon, but we just don't have a specific date right now.
Are there any related programs to develop and implement an ALPR capacity, along with a different question similar, along with hiring additional officers?
So I don't know what ALRP capacity is, and so I apologize, and I'll kind of toss it back to Thurston in a second. But with regard to hiring officers, there are several of our programs that do allow for hiring of new personnel for specific purposes, consistent with with the solicitation. But really, the best source for that is the COPS office. The COPS office has the COPS hiring program, and the COPS hiring program typically provides for 75% of salary and benefits over a 3-year period for new hires. So I would definitely check the COPS office. That's really the best source of funding for that.
And also, in regards to that, like we kind of mentioned, I think earlier with the presentation, go to the COPS office website. You can subscribe to receive like an email, like a electronic notification on forthcoming funding opportunities from them. And then also the third main grant component under the Justice Department, the Office on Violence Against Women. We suggest you do that for both of those, COPS and OVW, just so you can, if there's any information coming out within those criminal justice spectrum that kind of fits your needs.
And I want to clarify on the hiring piece, there is another really important program that I just overlooked that will provide funding for hiring, and that's the JAG program. So the Justice Assistant Grant Program. And truthfully, the JAG program is one of those, is probably the primary program where personnel are funded. And so definitely check the JAG program as well.
On that note on JAG, can nonprofit 501c3 agencies apply for JAG?
JAG funding is typically JAG funding is only available to states, tribes, and units of local government. But again, there are situations where subgrantees or subawardees could be involved, but not directly.
And as a quick follow-up with Vince, we suggest you go on to our website. If you Google BJ JAG, we have a website for our JAG program. You can go and look at the funding that has been provided from like the last several years at the state level. So, there's a JAG state formula amount, and then there's a JAG local amount as well. You can go on the website. You can pull up what money went to the SA for Virginia from last year, and then you can also, there's like a chart that shows the individual locality amounts that were dispersed to those different entities for the locality piece. It's like, for example, it could be like Fairfax, Virginia, and it'll say like, $30,000 or what have you, and it'll tell you the money that went to what specific entity. So you can maybe try to outreach and partner with those groups as well.
And this is it. I know we're getting close to the time here, but there are a couple of little pieces I kind of want to close the loop on. And one, if ALPR was referring to license plate readers, LPRs, then we do have a couple different programs that would support the purchase of that. And one would be the Smart Policing, the Strategies for Policing Innovation, or JAG program as well. And, for questions about what's allowable and whether those can be funded, one of the best sources of information really is your state administrative agency. So just contact your SAA and ask those same questions. And I did confirm that we do not require an ORI number for our funding.
Has the number of awards increased from 55 for the adult drug court grant?
I'm sorry, what was that number again? What was the question? I'm sorry.
Has the number of awards increased from 55 for the adult drug court grant?
This is Thurston. I'm not certain off the top of my head. I'm sure we have that information online in terms of what we awarded last year, for example, and then what is anticipated for this year. So I would suggest examining that. To see, like, if there is like if there's like an increase from what we put out last year, and then compare it to this year. And then keep in mind the number that we put on the slides for this year is just it's an estimate, but it's as accurate as we know right now.
With the Tribal Civil and Criminal Legal Assistance Program, is the authorizing agency OJC or the tribe who completes the application?
This is for TCLA?
Tribal Civil and Criminal Legal Assistance Program.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Usually I think it's a nonprofit And I think that's really a training and technical assistance program. So that wouldn't be, an award per se, like a site-based award, but those are training and technical assistance programs, and typically they're nonprofits.
Yeah, the other thing, too, for TCLA is that solicitation is posted. And so I suggest accessing that, like we've mentioned a couple of times. You can go onto the BJA main webpage and look under current funding opportunities. There will be a link for TCLA. And then once you actually pull up the solicitation, the eligibility will be like on the first couple of pages. It's usually like on the first page of the solicitation, but that'll have some more detail for that.
Vincent, Thurston, we're a little past the ending time. I wanted to just kind of put it out to see if you wanted to keep answering a few more questions that were in, or if you could address those by just directing to the website and to the chat features.
Well, I want to be as helpful as we can. I still see where we have several hundred people that are still on the call. So let's just go for maybe another 5 minutes if that works for Thurston.
Yeah, I'm good. Sounds great. Here to help.
The next question, will a solicitation on research and development and forensic science for criminal justice purposes be open this year?
Repeat that. You said solicitation on research on forensics?
It's the research and development in forensic science for criminal justice purposes.
Yeah, if it's a research, the forensic programs that BJA is going to administer were the ones that we presented on. If it's research related, it's going to be through the National Institute of Justice, which is one of our sister agencies within the OJP. So I would get linked in with them and to see if that's something that they're going to put out this year. But if it's like I said, the specific forensic science programs that BJA is going to administer, those were on the slides. If it's research related, it's going to be through NIJ, probably through either through their Office of Research and Evaluation or through their Investigative and Forensic Sciences Office. So I would check with NIJ. You just Google National Institute of Justice, and then they'll have information on their website in terms of being able to subscribe to receive information about what's forthcoming. But forensic research solicitation wouldn't be one that BJ would administer.
Thurston, this is actually Mary Jo. I can answer that. That is supposed to post. We don't have a firm date on that one, but it is anticipated that it will be posted. And that will be through NIJ, as Thurston had mentioned.
The next question, are we eligible to apply for any other JAG funds if we receive them locally under the formula and aren't eligible under our state agency's allocation?
So, with all things JAG, especially when you start talking about applying directly and then participating in formula programs at the state level, really, every state really kind of does things differently. And so I think it's incumbent to really have that conversation with your SAA just to make sure that nothing slips through the cracks and that you're taking full advantage of what's available, either through the formula program offered by the state or in addition to any direct JAG funding that an agency will be eligible for as well. But it really is a state's issue, and that's why it's so important to have that relationship with the SAA.
Next question. We lost a large piece of our funding for our domestic violence officer due to COVID. Are there any emergency funding sources we might be able to tap into? We are very rural and don't have many options.
Well, if it's personnel again, JAG is always an option there. I'm sure that there are other federal agencies that may have some assistance there. I think it's important to note, and I'll just take the occasion with this question to note that one of the top priorities for the Department of Justice this year really has been trying to respond to the needs of smaller agencies, in particular in rural law enforcement. And so I know that that's a priority, not just for the Department of Justice, but I think government-wide. And so other than JAG, and depending upon what the role and function of that officer was, perhaps the COPS office for officer hiring program. But I would also explore grants.gov for other federal opportunities that might kind of fill that need. And there's also the Coronavirus Emergency Supplement Award, and that is something that the SAA could absolutely assist with. So that particular need could be met by the SAA through the Coronavirus Emergency Supplement Award.
Was PS?
And real quickly, we've talked about JAG a couple of times throughout with the questions. Just wanted to make folks aware that within the chat that Brenda Worthington, who's one of our leadership staff members at BJ, Brenda's one of our well-versed in the JAG program with her office having to manage that. She has posted the link for the BJ JAG program in the chat box. And so we mentioned taking a look at that link. We highly suggest you click on that link, and then there will be a lot of information on there in terms of like funding that has been allocated at the state and local level across the United States, as well as like allowable expenses and things of that nature. So make sure you check out the chat section to access the link for our JAG program. Thanks, Brenda, if you're still on the line. Thanks, appreciate it.
Was PSN mentioned as one of the grant programs that will continue?
Yes.
Going through a couple more here. Will there be a webinar for the Byrne Criminal Justice Innovation Program?
This is Thursday.
That's a good question. Great question, please. Yes. Yeah, I just confirmed the answer is yes.
Okay. I was going to say that what we typically do is like, we're kind of talking broadly about programs across BJA. We're not getting into much detail. Typically what we have done over the years is, and Vince confirmed this, is that for our specific programs, when we do release a solicitation, our staff members who manage that portfolio or those programs will have a specific webinar for that specific program. So Vince just confirmed that there will be one for that program. But like, for example, we might do that with forensics. Like, once our programs are released, we would have a webinar for the field to talk about that specific program and to answer questions from the field for those folks who are interested in that. So Vince confirmed that the answer is yes, and so you might see that with some of the other programs as they become available.
Are there any grants to purchase vehicles?
Yes, I mean JAG. If you look at the JAG program, but there's certain criteria and specifications for that. Go ahead, Vince.
No, I was going to say, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I was just going to bring up JAG again as a possibility.
But make sure you look at the link that that Brenda had provided within the chat, because there might be some requirements for what types of vehicles those are.
Are there any grants available for working with families of law enforcement officers who died by suicide? We are similar to the Concerns of Police Survivors group.
So one of the things that, grants, that's kind of a specific question. I'm not exactly sure how to answer that, other than to say that the BJA, we do have a very active role and a big footprint in this space in terms of supporting officers and helping to kind of mitigate the impacts of stress on not only officers but their families as well. We work very closely with some of our national stakeholder organizations like IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, on suicide awareness, suicide prevention programs, but I'm not aware of specific grants for the circumstances that were described.
Yeah, this is Thurston. I'm not as well. I was wondering, and I'm not an expert, I don't know for sure. You might want to check with the Office for Victims of Crime, OVC, which is one of our partner agencies within the Office of Justice Programs. You might want to take a look to see like if they have any resources or specific grant opportunities for something like that. I don't know for sure, but you might want to just maybe take a look just to kind of see.
Will all grants eventually be part of the Just Grants site?
Yes.
Yes, that's what we kind of mentioned, that like now what we're trying to do is kind of consolidate all the DOJ grant components from OJP, all the bureaus within OJP, the COPS office, and OVW into a centralized one-stop shop system. So that's what Just Grants is going to do.
Do you know when the Justice Mental Health Collaboration Program will be announced?
No, not offhand. It's kind of like what we've been saying. Take a look and see, subscribe, to see like if, to see like when that funding opportunity might become available. I was going to actually pull up our website to see like if maybe perhaps that one is listed or not. Give me 1 second. I'll just take a quick look.
And Thurston, while you're doing that, although I want to go back to the question about the officer suicide. Although we don't have a particular grant program for that, we do have important resources. And one of the ones I'll point out is SAFELEO, SAFELEO. It's underneath our Valor for Blue program, and there's a lot of really important resources there for families that have unfortunately experienced this type of tragedy. And so, again, that's SAFELEO, SAFELEO, and it's under our Valor for Blue program.
And to get back to the our friend's question about JMHCP, I'm on the BJA website. If you go to the main page at the top, you'll see funding and awards. There's a link for available funding, which is the current funding opportunities. I do not see JMHCP currently listed. But as we mentioned, just to continue to check back with that and then subscribe to get the notification once it does become available. As Vince mentioned, we are just nonstop trying to get those opportunities out in the field as quickly as possible. And so you'll see those things pop up, like as Vince mentioned, could be some more today, tomorrow, next week, what have you. We're just trying to do the best we can to get those things out as quickly as possible.
And with that, I think we will be wrapping up today's webinar. Once again, this will be posted to the BJA website within 10 business days, along with the audio and PowerPoint. So please reference that. And also, please reference the additional webinar that's going to be part of this series that will be taking place on January 21st. On behalf of the Bureau of Justice, Vince, Thurston, did you have any last remarks?
I was going to say real quickly, Vince mentioned.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say real quickly, Kristen Mahoney, who is one of our leadership folks at BJA, she's one of our SESers. She posted the link for the Valor for Blue SAFELEO program within the chat section. So thanks, Kristen, for that. So if some of you are still on, you can access that link, save it, and then take a look at the resources available through that. For me, I have nothing else. I want to thank everyone, like Vince did, for allowing us to be a part of this. We are around to continuously help you guys. That's what we're here for. We love our work. So everyone stay safe, and then, we're here to help you. So everyone stay safe. Take care.
So on behalf of the Bureau of Justice Assistance, our panelists, thank you for joining today's webinar. This will end today's presentation.